welcome. So we're going to dive into chapter four. Um, Typically, the way I covers chapter four and chapter five is in a portion of the semester where um, we start getting deep into conversation. I think verbal and nonverbal are crucial parts of communication, but the things that they allow us to dive into a little bit deeper, I think, are um, probably more interesting to the students. So I end up covering a lot of relationships in chapter four. So we talk about face and face negotiation, which is a very verbal part of communication and a motivating force of communication. Um, we talk about politeness theory. The book brings in politeness theory to begin talking about verbal communication. I don't want to go into the boring stuff, denotative, connotative, things of that nature. Um, so I'm doing this a little bit different. I don't cover chapter eight because interpersonal is not quite my thing, and we actually have an interpersonal class. Professor Altieri does a wonderful job of teaching that. So I would rather just save it for you guys if you're interested a little bit more into the interpersonal. But this is a short discussion on interpersonal, and you have the opportunity to reflect on verbal communication uh, in this discussion. A lot of how we view the world uh, when it comes to relationships is very verbal, a very verbal endeavor here. Hold on, like I just said, three. Remind me tomorrow. All these update type things. Later. Remind me tomorrow. Okay, let's get this out of here. Okay, good. All right. Um, so let's begin this discussion again. Reminder for myself. I'm going to keep it as brief as possible. Um, Let me provide maybe a brief story that might help you understand this a little bit more. So I go downstairs just before had just finished doing some grading, and I went downstairs, and my wife was on the phone with some of her childhood friends, some of her waybacks, okay? And she's on there, she's cutting it up, and she's talking, and I don't hear her talk like this ever. She doesn't even talk to me like this. Uh, she doesn't talk to the friends that she typically talks to like this, okay? But she's on the phone with some of these friends. Go back to childhood, and she's talking with them, and she's getting very loose. I said, you're very loose with them. You're very relaxed. You talk differently with them, and it's a stark contrast because our relationships shape our verbal communication and the way that we interact with one another in such a way. Uh, the example I use is my friends who I made in college and in grad school or even in work. I'm much more formal with them than I am with my friends that go back all the way back to my teenage years, right? Um, those those relationships inform the verbal communication that we use. It informs how we structure our communication, what types of information we include in our verbal communication, what types of words do we use, right? There's certain words I'm just not going to use with my students. It doesn't make sense for me to use specific language. So, for example, some slang terms that me and my friends may use are not. I had a student, bust a couple slangs on me. Uh, out, they use some terms that are more common in youth vernacular today, and they blew over my head. Similarly, what happened to my language from when I was a youth is going to happen to your language. All right. And this is how verbal communication is structured. It's very contextual. It's pulled together in such a way that um, it can't really be decoded outside of your cultural group without understanding what the culture is to begin with, right? So that's the beginning of this. So we're going to go into social exchange theory, um, and again, this is not exactly 100% verbal communication. There's a lot of interpersonal communication built into this. But I think it's more interesting. It's a more interesting theory to engage in a roundabout way with verbal communication. You'll see why as we move towards the end of this discussion. So first, what I would like you to do, you can pause the video to do this. I'm going to tell you when to pause. So the first thing I want you to do is make a list of 5 of your closest friends. Okay? Okay, and then I want you to put a list of 3 pros and a list of 3 cons in that list of 5. And, pause the video to do this. Okay, so now your list should be 5 friends. You should have 6 times 5, 30 different little things written down. Okay, 3 pros and 3 cons for each one of your friends. Now what I would like you to do is I want you to remove 2 people from that list, or just indicate which 2 people. Okay. Find some way to do that, because I want you to post this in the discussion board, so we can see how your lists differ from one another. So remove 2 people from that list. Okay. So pause and just signify which people are going, which people are staying. Okay. Now what I would like you to do is briefly, just no more than a paragraph, write how you decided which people go and which people stay. Along with that, I would like you to offer any thoughts about how you verbally communicate with these individuals. Do you talk to all of them the same? Is one of the people that you listed your cousin? Would you not talk to your cousin one way and you talk to your friends the other way? Are there cultural differences? Are there gender differences? I want you to think about how you communicate with these individuals, and I want you to just write real quick. What was it like to omit, okay, 2 of these people from this list? How did that feel, and what criteria did you use? So just briefly write down there what criteria you use to eliminate these people from your list. So pause the video. Okay. So when you're done, what you should have is a list of 5 people, 3 pros, 3 cons for all of these people. Okay. And then just a brief paragraph explaining the process you use to eliminate these people. Okay. Just give some thought to how you communicate with each of these people. I don't need you to explicitly state that in your response. So the first thing I want you to do now is pause the video and watch video 1 in the video 1's link is posted in the discussion board. Okay, so social exchange theory is pretty straightforward. As you see in the video, we keep a running list of everything that individuals are doing. Social exchange theory is a very economical way of keeping track of our relationships. And the way that we keep track of our relationships is through stories. It's through a lot of verbal interaction with one another. Yes, there are nonverbal types of things that bring us together, but by and large, the way that we conceptualize our relationships with one another is, oh, this is my bestie, man. This is my BFF. This is my this is my college roommate. Like, everybody has a specific title we give to them. There's a specific linguistic exchange that goes on there. This is what builds up our verbal communication. If you've ever felt the need to put on an air or to speak differently to impress somebody who you thought you had to impress, maybe because they were going to give you a job, or maybe because they were going to help you get into a school that you wanted to. I have students who do this with me all the time, feel as if they need to talk to me about a certain subject or need to talk to me about a certain thing, instead of just maybe being I don't want to say being who we are, because as you've seen, delving into identity, we do put on a drama for everyday life, but we do perceive the world in a very uh, verbal way. The world is constructed through our language. It's as if we speak it into existence. Everything around us, behind me is a window, right? I'm sitting in an attic. You can see a light fixture. Am I going the wrong way? How do I point my finger back that way? Right there. I'm not very good at... Right there. See? Light fixture. Oh, am I getting better at doing this? Okay. All right. Whatever. Sorry about the weird. It's the mirror image is strange. No, it's got to go that way. Oh, there. I got it. The light fixture. Okay. The light fixture. Okay. There's a shirt. You can see I have a shirt over there. A mirror in the background. Okay. My hair is mess. All right. I am scruffy. Not shaved as much because I don't have very many formal things to do besides log on and do these classes with you. I'm wearing a iPhone headset or a Apple headset. It is thundering outside. There's a series of associations that come with all of this stuff. And this chapter does a great job of not doing much and explaining verbal communication. Does an even poorer job, in my opinion, of so basically what the book is doing is separating verbal communication from its nonverbal counterpart, which is you can't have either or. It's also separating out many things, and this is just my opinion, but I do think that we should really reflect a little bit greater on the role of verbal communication in everything, right? When we think of verbal communication, it's not just our, denotative, connotative language, syntax, semiotics coming together. When we atomize everything or we put it into the little pockets, it makes it difficult for us to understand the role of language in constructing our entire universe. Verbal communication is very crucial for that, right? And the only thing that's verbal about my voice is the words and the structure of those words, right? The way that I say cat and cat and cat is all, and we'll get into that in nonverbal. This is what's tricky, is that the verbal part, it has nothing to do with me verbalizing it, if that makes sense. It doesn't, right? We'll just wait until we get into chapter 5, and then it might make some more sense. So social exchange theory, pretty straightforward. So let's go back to social exchange theory, because that's going to be the basis for everything. This theory explains why we stay and we leave relationships. Why we do that is because we supposedly weigh the pros and the cons. And these pros and cons are verbalized somewhere. They're rationalized in our brains somewhere. We have to verbalize them. Even if we never speak those things, we're verbalizing the pros and the cons. We're putting them into language. We're saying, I should stay with this person because this person makes me look good. Or I should leave this person because this person is toxic. We've applied some kind of descriptor or some kind of verbalization to this and identified it, right? I see this right now with my daughter. Everything is being classified, right? She's classifying everything. She's using verbal language, even though she doesn't realize she's doing it. Her nonverbal language, by pointing to something, she's being verbal, right? She understands the concept. Today, so I'm making alcohol. Don't report me to the federal agencies, the ATF or anything. I'm making just a little bit of mead with some honey I bought from a farmer's market and some cherries that were about to go bad. So I have a little jar like this, and I'm shaking it up, and I just want to smell it. I want to see what it smells like. Is it still fermenting? The reason I'm doing this is because I'm reading a book about fermentation. I want to practice along the way. So I do this, and I close it, and I put it back on the counter, and I look down at my daughter, and she goes like this, huh. She wants to smell it, okay? She's verbalizing to me, but she's not speaking. Does that make sense? That is verbal communication. Social exchange theory rests on our ability to classify or to verbalize things, right? Um, so we maximize the benefits and we minimize the costs, right? The costs have had to be articulated or defined. The benefits have had to be articulated or defined. If I say somebody is toxic, that's a cost. If I say somebody makes me look good, that's a benefit. We are selfish creatures according to social exchange theory. We're selfish because we're able to classify and to organize and to place things into categories, right? And to put ourselves in this category, to remove ourselves from that category. I think of myself as a good father, so I want to put myself into a category with other good fathers. I need to verbalize that somehow, so I use verbal communication and non-verbal communication to put myself into that category. Are you guys beginning to understand the problem with just breaking out verbal communication, just saying this is verbal communication? That it's much larger than that. The things that we do, right? The words that I'm using, okay, are verbal, right? The words that I'm using is all part of verbal communication, but it's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than, if we flip through, okay, this book real quick and we talk about things such as, okay, we get to frame and syntax, all right, we're getting more into the linguistic, denotative and connotative. We get into words and values, God terms, devil terms. Way too confusing for you guys. By the way, if you guys are in New Jersey, right over here in Alamucci area where Tranquility Farms is, Andover, Kenneth Burke, the guy who's here on page 72, he had his farm in Andover, New Jersey. And if you get off at Penn Station in New York City, you'll see a little quote from Kenneth Burke. He's considered America's most brilliant philosopher, but he studied verbal language. He studied verbal communication. It says verbal communication is relational. That's where we're at. Conversational hypertext. It says verbal communication transacts cultures. It regulates cultural ways of talking. There's frames, communication frames. There's ways of speaking, adjusting relational frames. There's the pentad here. The pentad is, I won't go into that because that is a all lecture in and of itself. There's face work. We talk about politeness theory, okay, and that's all verbal. We transact face work through our verbal communication. Similarly, okay, social exchange theory, again, which is not listed in your book, which is why we're talking about it, is a theory that helps us to explain why we think some relationships are worth staying in or some relationships are worth leaving. There's comparison level. Okay, the comparison level is what do I expect to gain from this relationship? And then there's the comparison level of alternatives. Okay, what other options are there? So if you're in a romantic relationship, you might, the benefits you might have from being in a relationship. Maybe, the girl you're with takes you out to lunch all the time, and that's really cool, and she buys your cigarettes and stuff or whatever. The comparison level of alternative, maybe for that girl, she found another guy that is, maybe more motivated than you. Maybe he doesn't need anybody to take him to lunch. He pays for her own lunch, right? That's the comparison level of alternatives. When we're in a relationship, we view it as a game where we can't obviously be friends with 300 people effectively. We can't have relationships with 300 people effectively. So we have alternatives. We have, if you ever wonder why you stop hanging out with somebody and you're like, oh man, I don't see that person as much as I used to. It was really nice hanging out with them. I wonder what they're probably not by themselves. There was an alternative. Or you found the alternative and you forgot about them, right? That's how relationships work. And we transact these things verbally, but also non-verbally, right? So my prompt two is I would like you to write about one of the relationships that you have that you think goes against this theory, right? This theory being the social exchange theory, being that I am in a relationship and I find an alternative If that alternative is better, I will leave this relationship. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that we view relationships like money? So pause the video and just write. That's prompt number 2. Only has to be like a paragraph long. Sorry, pause the video. Only about a paragraph. I want you to write about a relationship that you believe goes against this theory. It can be a relationship that you have or one that you've witnessed before. Okay, so the next, video number 2, I would like you to watch video number 2. So pause the video, watch video number 2. Okay, so this demonstrates comparison level of alternatives. So we just talked about comparison level of alternatives. The guy is talking about his crazy girlfriend, okay? And his girlfriend is like genuinely crazy, right? Or, everything we compare, there's an alternative to compare it to. Everything is relational. When we say something is relational, that's what we mean, is that everything can be compared through a relational thing. So I have seen I've seen some pretty bad neighborhoods in Detroit, but it was nothing like the poverty I saw when I was in Mexico. It was nothing like the poverty that I saw when I was in India. Everything is relational. It doesn't mean that these things are bad, right? Or these things are good, right? I feel wealthy. Okay, I have clean water. I have food. I can, feed my daughter food from our garden and stuff. Obviously, I can also say I feel poor because I don't have, Kylie Jenner money or whatever, right? Everything is relational. Similarly, the way that we view relationships is relational. The grass is always greener on the other side, right? Is a big concept that we often wrestle with here. So prompt 3, I would like you to write briefly how we compare our relationships to those that exist on television, right? So naturally, we all, in some way or another, succumb to watch, even if like you're so like anti, I don't watch TV, man, boob tube, yeah, it's like TV's for lames, man. Even if you don't watch TV, we're inevitably comparing ourselves to some. You might be like anti-mainstream media, but you're still like, oh man, Elon Musk and Grimes, that's a really cool relationship, bro. You might still compare yourself to something that you've seen somewhere, even if it's not on TV. So, okay, scratch TV. How do you compare yourselves to relationships that you see in the media, wherever that may be? Okay? Wherever that may be. So I want you to stop the video for a second and just write, how do we compare our relationships to those that are on TV? And you don't even have to write about yourself. If you really, if you think it's you don't do that, if you really don't think that you compare yourself to anybody out there besides yourself, that's fine. You can write about somebody else. Maybe don't mention them, don't blast them out there, but just write about how we compare ourselves to relationships that are on television or in the media. So that's prompt 3. Okay. So lastly, I just want to talk, briefly about my my problems with this theory. So this is the theory problematized here. Anybody who had strict parents, I think I had strict parents. Many people that I know would say you didn't have strict parents, but I had a curfew. Out of all my friends, I had the worst curfew. I had to be home at like 9 p.m. on school nights in high school, and I think it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock on weekend nights, which was awful for like a high school kid who wants to just go out and party and have a good time, right? I thought I had strict parents. How many of you guys who think you had strict parents wish you had carefree parents? Okay, I know I did. Like, I really know that I wish that. So if I were to do a pros and a cons, okay, I would think of, my DJ's, his mom and dad were so cool. We used to, make music until 1 a.m. in his house, and that was fine. That was cool. We could do whatever we wanted over there. At my house, right, it was like I was worried about waking my dad up. I didn't want him to get angry or whatever. I got to work in the morning. But, reflecting back, I appreciate my parents were so strict, which really were not that strict if I reflect on, like, um, what they were trying to teach me. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I wasn't able to be out until 2, 3 in the morning and get into trouble. Like, I lead a very fulfilling life, probably because my parents were a little bit stricter. Comparison level of alternatives um, views us as static objects. It views our understanding of the world as um, a snapshot in time. It does not take into consideration um, that we have various levels of wisdom and rationality at various times in our life. Um, and over the course of our life, we process information and we change our thoughts, okay? Um, so, for example, I have a good friend, and I'll still call him a good. We've been friends since like um, let's see here, 26 minutes. We're good. We've been friends since I first moved to Michigan. So I was like 10 years old, and I went to this kid's neighbor's house, my good friend's neighbor's house, and his neighbor was one of the first kids I had met, and I was like, man, it's really nice out here in Michigan. I really enjoy this neighborhood. It's really peaceful, and everybody's so friendly. And the kid goes, yeah, except for this one kid. And I hear ka-chunk, 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 right? The sound of the skateboard trucks going. And like I hear kids screaming, going, ah, no, don't kill me. And all these kids and animals are screaming and all this stuff. And I see this kid skateboarding towards us, and he like stops on his skateboard like Bart Simpson. He goes, what's up, dude? And like that was the way I tell this, my friend hates when I do this, but I say like the skies darkened, the birds started squealing and flying away and everything. And that was the first moment I met this kid who was my good friend. It's really dark in here now. I'm sorry about that. A thunderstorm just rolled in. This was the first moment I met my friend, and ever since then, like it was foreshadowing. We always got into trouble. Okay, whenever I'm with this kid, we get into trouble or something happens, right? Um, and there's many times I'm like, dude, I'm not talking to you. We got to take a break from whatever. I can't see you. You're disrespectful. You're disrespectful to me. You don't consider my time. Consider anything. But we always go back to being friends. Social exchange theory would say that I would stop being friends with them because of these bad experiences. But it doesn't consider that as humans, we are also irrational. We're not as rational as an economical theory like this, right? As humans, we tend to value things with greater weights, like memories. Like my memories are fond of the things that we've done together, so we would remain friends into the future, right? So that is, I really hate this lighting situation here. I'm really sorry for that. My light is not plugged in right now. As humans, we do irrational things. We rationalize them verbally. If somebody were to say, "Why are you still friends with that person?" I don't know if I didn't study this kind of stuff, I would be able to really articulate it. I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm friends with this person, right? But because I study these things, I have great memories with him. I spent a lot of time with him. The great memories that we produced when we had little responsibilities in the world outweigh the memories that I have when I could spend an hour with my friend on a Saturday because all of my other responsibilities take over, right? When I had unstructured time in my teen years, it was much easy to be like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with this. We've been hanging out for 36 hours straight, man. That was cool." Like, you can't do that stuff when you're old and responsible, right? Those memories are strong. They're powerful, and we verbalize them. We create entire stories and fictions and mythologies, which are all verbal, to explain these friendships, and that's really the flaw of in my opinion, of social exchange theory. So what I like to do is I want you to stop the video and watch video 3. Okay, one final prompt. Should we treat relationships like currency? I just write how you feel about this. So that's it. That's what I got for you. That's chapter 4. I promise to keep chapter 5 brief. Thank you.